What happens when your longtime stylist loves to talk books and movies? You write them into your mystery. That's what Kira Jacobs did in her latest Mysteries to Die For short story. Blurring real life into fiction is what this Hoosier native does best, writing everything from romance to mystery and fantasy. You can find Kira's full backlist, including her latest release, Small Town Romance Once Upon a Summer Night, at kirajacobsbooks.com. Welcome to Mysteries to Die For. I am TG Wolff, and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. All of our stories are structured to challenge you to beat the detective to the solution. These are arrangements, which means instead of word-for-word readings, you get a performance that's meant to be heard. Jack and I perform these live, front to back, no breaks, no fakes, no retakes. This is Season 7, Games People Play. Games are about competition conducted according to rules with participants working toward a common goal. Games are part of every culture and are one of the oldest forms of social interaction and engagement. Games can be fun, challenging, and exhilarating, and they can be intense, cutthroat, and lethal. This season, our authors have fashioned deadly games and unscrupulous villains to test your detection skills. This is episode 21. Candyland is the featured game. This is Death by Candyland by Kira Jacobs.
How do you mispronounce Hoosier?
I don't know.
It's not like you mispronounced Mississippian or something.
I don't know. My tongue just did not want to wrap around that word, and
That's okay.
I was like,
I needed to call you out on it.
Kira's never gonna let me live that one down. It just Hoosier. I don't know. Know. It just did not.
Really, when you think about it, Hoosier, it doesn't sound like a real word.
Well, that's probably why I stumbled over it.
And it's spelled like Hoosier.
Hoosier.
That doesn't help. Hoosier.
If you did it with Hoosier, if you did it with Hoosier.
It's French.
Sorry, everybody in Indiana.
You want to pick a different sound for today? Let's try ethnic.
Well, this is a Halloween theme.
Oh, so
because
ethnic 2 should be cool. That's weird.
That is such a silly name for a sound. Ethnic?
Well, actually, it's a category. There's ethnic 1 and ethnic 2, and it's really just for every instrument that they don't know where to categorize it as. Now, I don't know if it's politically appropriate, so blame Casio. I'm just reading the board, okay? Don't come at me on Twitter or X.
I don't know what that's supposed to be.
It is Erhu. ERHU. And this is Erhu 2. There's also Erhu 4.
Oh, the Erhu kind of goes with our Hoosier.
We're going to go Erhu 4 today.
Okay. Oh, boy. We're in for a goodie.
Uh-huh.
Chapter 1, The Party. My name is Mick Garcia, and I love Halloween. Love it. To me, there's nothing better than hitting a good scream park to get you into the holiday spirit or hosting the perfect party after the trick-or-treaters have all come and gone. But my favorite part of all is the costumes. There's something almost magical about being able to choose to be anyone or anything that you want to be. Not that I'm unhappy with who I am the other 364 days of the year. Sure, I'd hoped to be the first person in my second-generation immigrant family to attend college, but after an unfortunate string of bad luck in my late teens, I found myself having to come up with a plan B, which eventually led me to the career that I now have. I'm the crime scene photographer for our county sheriff's department. It's been a great gig these past 10 years and allowed me the opportunity to buy my own house on a street with the best neighbors a guy could ask for. Even better, they love Halloween too. Most of them humor me with unique, well-planned costumes and even offer input during the planning phase. Admittedly, We all got a little carried away with last year's Game of Thrones theme. I mean, with that theme, how could you not? Unfortunately, a few of the neighborhood kiddos were a bit traumatized by my front porch beheaded head candy bowl. So I thought I'd go for a more family-friendly theme this year, one that would stretch my creativity levels to a new height. I brought Candyland to life. Well, Mick, said my next-door neighbor, Savannah Livingston, as she paused before the adult beverage punch bowl I was refilling, you've really outdone yourself this year. She was dressed as the Lollipop Fairy. Lollipop wings, wand, and all. Her gaze drifted across the others mingling among the Peppermint Forest, Gumdrop Pass, Peanut Acres, Lollipop Woods, the Chocolate Swamp, and the Snowflake Lake. Then she turned back to me on an appreciative sigh. I don't know how you'll ever top this one. It did come out amazing, didn't it? I said. My gaze shifted to the backyard I barely recognized as my own. Every tree had been transformed into either peppermint sticks or licorice trunks, thanks to countless yards of red, white, and purple foil streamers. I'd hung additional purple streamers throughout the licorice forest to act as a maze for the kids, which they wove through looking for candy hidden along the way. There was a bounce house in Gumdrop Mountain, a snow machine tossing sparkling white flakes across the mid-yard, and a massive chocolate fountain taking up the majority of my back deck. Every inch of my fence railing inside surface was covered with giant felt gingerbread men, and the fog created from dry ice machines spilled across the entire yard, adding to the illusion. I have to say, when you told us what this year's theme would be, I was curious to see what you had planned, said my neighbor from across the street, Doc Hallers, who was dressed as King Candy. He pointed his hefty royal gumball scepter in my direction. You, sir, have the grandest imagination in all the land. Tell me, is Jorge coming? I'd hate for that brother of yours to miss such a spectacle. I frowned, and unfortunately, no, he couldn't make it with his work schedule. But don't worry, I took plenty of pictures before you all arrived. I'm pretty pleased with how it all turned out. How do you come up with ideas like this, Mick? Asked Savannah. I looked to the colorful stepping stones weaving a path through the yard, my gaze landing on a nearby green one. I've always loved designing and creating, I said. Considered going to school for graphic arts back in the day. Well, that explains why you're so good at photography, she responded. It also explains how you managed to create the best costumes, said Savannah's husband, Tyler, who had joined our small group. Tyler was tall and thin, so him playing the role of the peppermint lumberjack, Mr. Mint, was a no-brainer. I'd helped him assemble his costumes a few weeks back, and it turned out great. Even so, it didn't hold a candle to my own Lord Licorice ensemble. I snuck a quick look at my reflection in one of the nearby windows. My cape took longer to create than I dared to admit, and the tights were a bit itchy, but having an excuse to grow out this handlebar mustache, well, that made it all worthwhile. You really don't expect me to transform my entire yard and forget to get into character myself, do you? We all know better, said Cindy Flanagan, as she and her husband Sam joined the conversation. Cindy was dressed as Grandma Nut, an old garden hoe in one hand, and Sam was dressed as her giant pet Peanut. But we are also hoping that one day you'll do the rest of us a favor and forget to invite you-know-who. Please, tell me you didn't invite that idiot again, grumbled Herb Smathers, the widower who lived a few houses down. He was dressed as Gloppy, the blob from the Candyland Chocolate Swamp, which blended nicely with his bald head and sagging double chin. A round of complaints suddenly arose from inside Gumdrop Mountain. Guess I got my answer, Smathers said. I cringed, looking in that direction, and just like that, the joy in the moment faded. All thanks, assuredly, to Harry Randall. How could it not, when the local bully had spent most of his adult life dancing on the edge of the law while terrorizing our small town? I had yet to see him tonight, as focused as I'd been on playing host to my other guests, but I had zero doubt that he would show. Harry was like a bad cold, the kind you just can't shake. Even worse, this particular bad cold had witnessed me make a very poor decision many years ago. It'd just take one whisper to the wrong person of what he'd seen me do, and I'd be locked up before my boss, the sheriff, could count to 10. And oh, how Harry liked to hold that over my head. In his mind, he more or less owned me after that, and that's how he's treated me ever since, which meant not inviting Harry was never an option. Hurried footsteps sounded as the trio of Flanagan children, each dressed as M&Ms, came running toward where we stood. "Harry's in the bounce house," the red M&M whined. "We can't jump with him in there." "Yeah, make him get out, Mama," pleaded the green one. "He's in the bounce house?" Cindy demanded, planting her free hand on one hip. "What the devil's he doing in there?" "Well, we asked him to leave, but he just keeps staring at us," insisted the yellow M&M, the tallest of the bunch. "Now the bounce house is all crooked and doesn't work right." My adult guests frowned, their accusatory gazes on me. "I'll go talk to him," I said with a sigh. "No," said Doc Hallers. "I'll go. It's high time he and I had a little come-to-Jesus chat anyway." I watched him go, hoping things wouldn't get out of hand. It was no secret that Harry didn't like my neighbors, probably because they were all good, kind-hearted people, and he was not. But did that keep him from showing up year after year? No. Thankfully, the others refused to be intimidated by him and continued to come to my parties. The group's conversation slowly returned to costumes and decorations. Sam Flanagan joked about how his nuts were cramped inside the giant nut. Tyler laughed and admitted his Where's Waldo shirt and overalls didn't seem so bad in comparison to that. I had just started to admit how constrictive Lord Licorice's tights were when Doc returned, his face solemn. "Well," asked Sam, "did you get him out of there?" Doc shook his head. "Afraid I can't do that without the proper authorities." "Why not?" demanded Cindy, her proverbial mama hackles clearly preparing to rise. "Because," Doc said, his gaze shifting to mine, "Harry's dead." Chapter 2. The Stiff. Needless to say, chaos ensued. The entire group rushed over to see for themselves that Harry was indeed dead. Shock and surprise were the common themes. And then the questions began. When had he died? When did it happen? Why was he in the bounce house? And who may have played a role in his death? Wary glances lit my guests' eyes, everyone taking a subtle step back. I stared at the scene in disbelief. Was this really happening? First we find Harry dead, and now my beloved neighbors were on the brink of turning against each other? "Listen, there has to be a logical explanation to all of this," I insisted, wanting to keep the peace. "Mick's right," agreed Dr. Hallers. "We should let the authorities assess the situation and determine what happened to Harry." "I vote we dump him in the river and forget the whole thing ever happened," said Herb Smathers. "It's not like anyone will miss the son of a bitch." Heads bobbed in agreement at the old man's suggestion, mine included. Doc, however, frowned. As he started to disagree, Cindy Flanagan cut him off. "What if we call and they come out and blame one of us?" she said, drawing her family closer. "Did you do it?" Doc replied. Collectively, we shook our heads. "Then you have nothing to worry about," said Doc, as he lifted his cell phone to one ear. "Justice will prevail." I shared a skeptical look with the others. To date, the justice keepers in our community hadn't done much to protect us all from the bully that now lay dead in Candyland. Then again, maybe the sheriff would be relieved to hear that his biggest public nuisance would be terrorizing the town no more. An ambulance with 2 EMTs arrived within minutes, followed shortly thereafter by Sheriff Jimmy Cantalone and one of the younger deputies. I led each group through the house toward the sliding glass doors off my kitchen that led to the deck out back. It was currently the only accessible way in and out, my party decorations along the fence temporarily backing access by my exterior gate. "Good God, Mick," Sheriff Cantaloni grumbled as he stepped out onto the deck. "It looks like Walt Disney threw up all over your yard." I tried for a smile. "You know I go all out for Halloween, sir." "Since when did Halloween involve snow machines?" my boss asked. "Or rainbow-colored stepping stone? Looks more like the set of some gaudy game show to me." "I was going for family friendly," I said through numb lips. "Candyland was my first board game." "I see," said Sheriff Cantaloni, his experienced gaze scanning my backyard. "So where's the body?" I pointed to the bounce house decorated as Gumdrop Mountain. "In there." He frowned and turned to his deputy. "Take Mick's guests inside. See if you can separate them in rooms. If not, just make sure no one's talking about what did or did not transpire tonight. Oh, and confiscate their cell phones. I don't need a group-crafted answer to our questions." The sheriff's gaze swung my way. "You, come with me." Do I need to grab my camera, sir?" I asked. "Not tonight, son," he answered, his voice solemn. That was a relief to hear. It had been hard enough seeing Harry dead from the doorway of the bounce house. There's no way I could have held my camera steady while snapping close-up pictures of him from a dozen different angles. Just the thought of it had me breaking out in a cold sweat, my mind still struggling with the reality of it all. There was a dead body in Candyland. While Sheriff Cantaloni crawled his way toward where Doc Hellers had made his startling discovery, I remained outside, trying to keep my stomach from revolting. A quick glance found that Harry remained exactly as we found him inside the bounce house, laying on his side, wedged between the inflatable base and the side walls, his eyes open, staring out into nothingness. He was dressed in his usual attire, black jeans and biker boots, black t-shirt, gold chain necklace, nose forever crooked from his one-too-many bar fights, and his thinning hair slicked back to hide the balding spot on the back of his crown. As usual, he was the only guest who had arrived without a costume. "How did you say Mr. Randall came to be in this position?" the sheriff called over the hum of the generator and fan. "We found him like this after the Flanagan kids tattled on him," I hollered back. "They complained that Harry was in the bounce house and wouldn't get out." The sheriff nodded. "Looks like the kids kept jumping, thinking he'd leave eventually. Between his weight and the movement, he ended up stuck over here." He scooted out of the way of the bounce house and came to stand beside me. "Either that or you wedged him in there yourself when he arrived out of costume and left him for dead, then paid the kids to be your alibi." My jaw dropped. "Sheriff, He waved off my rebuttal. "Just trying to lighten the mood, Mick. You're looking a little green. Don't worry, the medical examiner should be here soon. Once she does her assessment, we can get this thing deflated and Mr. Randall out of your yard and over to the morgue. He got any next of kin we should notify?" "His parents are both gone, but he's got a sister in Virginia," I replied. "Her and Harry weren't very close, though." "Imagine that," the sheriff said with a snort. "Hell, the only person in town he wasn't actively terrorizing was you. Probably because you were already scared into submission." I looked to Harry's biker boots, toes tipped at awkward angles, just like the feet of that homeless hitchhiker after I clipped him with Harry's car all those years ago. Harry had bullied me into drinking, then bullied me into playing his chauffeur. I haven't touched a drop of whiskey since, something he still gave me shit about to this day. Well, he had given me grief about it, along with 100 other things he had disapproved of. While Harry had bullied the others in town with physical acts, his abuse of me had been on the psychological level. For the first time since learning of Harry's death, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. There'd be no more bullying, no more holding my troubled teenager past over my head like a guillotine. Hell, I could finally have a girlfriend again and not worry that he'd run her off like he'd done to all the others. Rather than expound on this, I simply replied, "Maybe so." "Lucky you, or he probably would have destroyed your Halloween decorations every year," said the sheriff. He studied me for a moment before he asked, "Think anyone here tonight wanted him dead?" My jaw dropped. "You think one of my guests killed him in the middle of my party?" Not sure what I think, he said, squinting toward the backside of my house. But if you've got any leads you'd like to share, now would be a good time to do it. Otherwise, this could be a very long night. So what do you think? You like to go play in Candyland?
It didn't occur to me till like 20 seconds ago that the kids are jumping around with a dead body. They were like, he's just sitting there staring. And I was like, that's weird. Harry's being creepy. Oh, and then he died. No. Harry was dead in the bounce house, and the kids were just hopping and bopping to the Crocodile Rock, you know? Can I say that?
Yeah, happy Halloween.
Yeah. Well, that's something. Although the Halloween, hold on.
Yes.
When does this episode drop?
The day after Halloween.
Day after Halloween. Okay.
We are recording this. Well, it's still October.
It's October. Normally I'm used to recording an episode. It's September and it drops in February. So I was like, is this going to drop next year? No. We're actually recording this one pretty close.
Yeah.
Compared to what we normally do.
It is fall here. The leaves have fallen and they're crunchy. It smells like fall outside.
Kind of.
There's
like,
no pretty
fall
colors.
is so weird in Indiana. It's just this year, like everything died because it all just,
The drought.
The drought.
No pretty colors.
And then it rained and everything's coming back to life and it's supposed to die. Like everything's
It doesn't die.
green.
It goes to sleep.
Okay, well the leaves die. All the chlorophyll dries out.
Yes, and then it gets crunchy and it smells really good.
Yeah. The dude hit a homeless guy?
Apparently, dude hit a homeless guy.
I was expecting worse, to be honest with you. But that's pretty fun too.
Well, and it doesn't say he killed homeless guy, but at the very least it would have been a hit and run. So he definitely committed a crime.
Yeah.
And then he got blackmailed for it.
For like a while. Apparently they were teenagers during that.
Yeah.
Poor dude never had a girlfriend. Well, not never, but like couldn't
Harry
keep a
Randall
girlfriend.
kept chasing him off.
Man, Harry, what a dick.
Yep.
All right, let's keep on trucking along.
With Chapter 3, the Emmy's Initial Assessment.
Woo.
The county medical examiner arrived 10 minutes later, tugging her lab coat over a Harley Quinn costume that she stepped out onto the back deck. Clearly, I wasn't the only one celebrating All Hallows Eve. I offered an apology for interrupting her evening, which she received with a shrug. It's part of the job, she said. So, unless you were the one who stuffed the unlucky stiff into your bounce house, there's no reason for an apology. Death happens. Yeah, but it's never happened before at my house, I said. Fair. A grin tugged at her lips, easing my conscience further. Our Emmy and I had always gotten along. She'd been one of my biggest mentors on the force, taking me back from a handful of panic attacks in my early crime scene days. Tonight, she gave me a friendly jab to the shoulder, then climbed into the bounce house. A short while later, she emerged from it and motioned for the EMTs to take the body away. Well? Asked the sheriff. I stepped closer, wanting to hear what she found. His arms and torso show evidence of recent trauma, she said, though I can't tell in this lighting if it was anything enough to be lethal. Oh, he stopped by this morning looking for some ibuprofen, I offered, mumbled something about a bouncer messing him up after last call. Who knows if he was telling the truth. I didn't see him when he arrived tonight, though, so I can't say what he looked like. I don't remember hearing any fight breaking out during the party. Would you even have known there was a fight among all of this fluff? Asked the sheriff, waving an arm toward my Candyland recreation. The Emmy answered before I respond. Even if there had been a fight, I'm not entirely sure that did him in. Harry Randall's lips and fingernails have a blue tint to them. Usually, that points to a possible overdose. An overdose? Asked Sheriff Cantaloni. Of what? I don't know yet, she said, but I'll do a full workup on the body once we get him over to the morgue. I'll be in touch.
Do you have to disclose to the bounce house owner that a guy died in it before you return it?
I have no
Do
idea.
you have to tell them that?
I don't
Do you think
know.
they want to know? Would they sanitize it? I mean, they have to sanitize
They
it
have to
between every.
sanitize it anyway,
But how
right?
sanitized are they going to make it if a dude died in there? Especially a guy named Harry.
Well, I have no idea what the answer is to that.
Well, I have some homework once this episode's over. People have died in bounce houses before. The answer is out there, okay? It's not like, I don't know, we'll see when it happens, okay? It's out there. Bounce houses have been around since, like, what, the 60s,
I
70s?
have no idea.
They were around in the 80s. I imagine they were around before then, too.
So you're saying just by simple statistics that somebody somewhere has to have died in a bounce house.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably
Same
a
thing with
Florida
Ferris
man.
wheels, you know?
It's probably a Florida man.
Poor Florida. I mean, they deserve it, but still.
Somebody recently showed me a thing that said it could only happen in Florida. A woman was driving a F-150, and she had a grown man in a dog crate in the back of the pickup truck.
Hey, man, we all got our, well, they
Yeah.
didn't keep it in the bedroom. They kept
No,
it
they
in the
didn't.
truck of their bed. All right, in the bed of the truck.
That was good.
If I had said it right, it would have been better.
I knew what you said, though.
Don't worry, listeners. You can steal that for all your cool parties come Halloween. Well, I guess it's November now.
It is November 1st.
Wow, that's crazy. All right.
Let's go into Chapter 4 and the suspects.
Yup.
I led Sheriff Kent. I don't know why I said Lev. Let's try that again. I led Sheriff Cantalone back inside so he could get statements from everyone. Not gonna lie, the minute he pulled out his beloved bat and pad, my hands began to sweat, which was dumb. Surely my boss didn't have any reason to think I had anything to do with Harry's death. We all know Mr. Randall liked his liquor, the sheriff said as he took seats in my living room. You're aware of him dabbling in any illegal substances? No, sir. Bourbon and cigarettes were his vices of choice. He didn't have the patience or the funds for anything else. I should know, I added. He's always bumming money off of me. That's enabling, Mick. For all you know, he could have been using the money to buy harder stuff. Actually, I said, these past few months he's been trying to clean up his act. Oh, the sheriff smirked. What was her name? I offered him a sad smile and responded, Rhonda. Cantalone's deputies soon brought the Flanagan family into the room. Sam had removed the head of his peanut costume, but Cindy remained fully in hers, the garden hoe still in her hand. In this lighting, I could see that the wood near the base was stained with a reddish brown. From a recent mulch delivery, she insisted after catching the sheriff's wary gaze. After some gentle prompting by their mother, the three M&Ms explained that Harry had been banging on the outside of the bounce house before he dove through the netted opening. The kids said that once Harry was inside, Harry never did any bouncing. He just laid there. As they bounced, he rolled toward the far side, making the bounce house lopsided. When he refused to move away from the wall, the kids gave up and went to find their parents to see if they could make him leave. The sheriff thanked them for sharing what they saw, then asked them to wait in the kitchen so the adults could talk for a few minutes more. Do you believe their story? He asked Sam and Cindy. Sam nodded. Yeah, they were pretty mad when they came and got us. His jaw tightened. Had I known he was beating on the outside of the bounce house while my kids were in there, I would have made sure he never got any closer to them. Sheriff Cannelloni raised a brow. Oh? And what exactly would you have done? Sam clammed up, but his wife refused to remain quiet. Harry Randall was a bully. He terrorized the entire town. Don't sit there and pretend you don't know how we all felt about him. The sheriff leaned back in his seat on my favorite recliner. So your family had a history with Mr. Randall? Shows how involved you are in your department's investigation, Cindy spat. He used to cut through our yard after last call, his drunk ass stomping all over my flower garden. When Sam put up a small fence around it, he kicked it down. Then we fortified it and he took to defecating on our lawn, something your department refused to do anything about, even after we got it on video. Sheriff Cannelloni frowned. I'm aware of the incident. We issued a citation. Hey, a lot of good that did, Cindy grumbled. We should have handled it ourselves. At least then something would have actually been done. Did you want Mr. Randall dead, Mrs. Flanagan? He replied, his gaze flashing to Cindy's garden hoe. Her husband bristled. She put a hand on his knee. I wanted him gone, she said. We all did. But how could we kill the thug when we didn't even know he was here until the kids tattled on him? Interesting. The sheriff jotted down a note. Just one more question, Mr. and Mrs. Flanagan. Did either of you have any illegal substances in your possession tonight? Seriously, Sheriff? We have our children with us, for crying out loud. Red-faced, Cindy rose to her feet. Come on, Sam. Let's go home. The sheriff requested the hoe be handed over as evidence before they left, mumbled a comment about just doing his job, and allowed them to leave. Next, Savannah and Tyler Livingston were brought in for questioning. Both were still in costume, Savannah holding tight to her pointy lollipop wand, and Tyler lugging his lumberjack's axe. Savannah offered me a kind smile. How are you holding up? She asked, taking a seat closest to me. I shook my head. I'm still processing it all. The sheriff cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Livingston, thank you for your patience as we do our due diligence in determining what transpired here tonight. Does that mean you think Harry was murdered? Savannah asked, her eyes widening. All I know is that I arrived here tonight to find a man dead, the sheriff responded. Tell me, did either of you interact with Mr. Randall prior to the discovery of his body in the bounce house? I did, said Tyler. He was trying to get into the yard through the side gate, but he couldn't because of mixed gingerbread decorations. I told him to go through the house. He told me to kiss his ass. Did he go through the house? Asked the sheriff. Tyler shrugged. I'm guessing so, since he eventually made it into the backyard. I didn't see him after we talked at the fence. The sheriff eyed Taylor's axe. Did you have that on your person all night? Yes, sir. Tyler straightened. And before you ask, no, I didn't assault Harry with it. Wouldn't have done much damage even if I did. It's fake. He handed it over to the sheriff, who lifted it with ease. Plastic, the sheriff murmured. Even so, we'll need to add this to our evidence collection. He looked to Savannah. And you? Did you interact with Mr. Randall tonight? She frowned. Yes, unfortunately. I came inside to use the restroom. Harry was standing in the kitchen, scowling out the window over Mick's sink with a bottle of Jim Beam in his hand. Made sure to say something crass as I walked by, but I'd take that any day over what he did to me in the parking lot this morning. I grimaced, afraid to hear the latest drama between them. Savannah and Tyler owned a small hardware store in town that Harry enjoyed vandalizing as he passed by. Bags of mulch and stone were torn or dumped, stone yard ornaments tipped over and broken. Like the Flanagans, the Livingstons had reported the incidents to the sheriff's department, but nothing much had been done to stop it. They finally bought a security camera, hoping it would keep him away. Judging by the look of silent rage brewing just beneath the surface of Tyler's face, it hadn't. More damage to your merchandise? The sheriff asked. Savannah frowned. No, Mr. Randall, he flashed my wife, said Tyler, the muscles in his jaw tight. It's a good thing I wasn't there, or Harry might not have made it here tonight. I found him later and made sure he knew the kind of behavior would not be tolerated. Oh, asked the sheriff. Took matters into your own hands, did you, Mr. Livingston? It's a man's job to protect his family, Sheriff, especially when the people employed by the town won't do their damn job. Sheriff Cantillone stiffened. Last I knew, martial law hadn't been imparted in these parts. That means our citizens need to leave law enforcement to our department. So you can do what? Write citations? That doesn't do jack shit, said Tyler. The sheriff's gaze narrowed. Did you kill Mr. Randall, Mr. Livingston? Armed with my plastic axe at a party where kids were present? Tyler snorted. I think you need to ask yourself a different question, Sheriff. If your department had actually done something about his behavior, would Harry Randall still be alive? He rose to his feet. Come on, Vanna. One more question, Mr. and Mrs. Livingston, said my boss. Did either of you bring any illegal substances to the party tonight? Tyler flipped him off and tugged his wife from the room. I watched them go, Tyler's rebuttal echoing in my mind. After hearing two couples point out our local sheriff's department's lack of definitive action, I had to agree with the question our entire street had been grappling with for years. Why hadn't the sheriff been more involved? It wasn't something I'd ever been able to bring up to ask at the water cooler. Even now, I couldn't work up the nerve. Sheriff Cantalone must have known my gears were turning because he avoided my gaze, scribbling notes on a pad until Dr. Hollers entered the room, still dressed as King Candy and carrying his royal gumball scepter. So, asked Doc, what did the M.E. say? Now you know I can't reveal that during an ongoing investigation, Sheriff Cantalone said with a weary grin. Why don't you pass me your royal weapon while you tell me what you observed of Mr. Randall tonight? Well, I passed Harry in the kitchen maybe a half hour before he intruded on the kids in the bounce house, Doc said, handing over the item requested. I'd gone inside to use the restroom and came out to find him with a pill in one hand and a bottle of Jim Beam in the other. A pill? The sheriff leaned forward. Did you get a good look at it? Doc shook his head. His hand was cupped. I might not have noticed if he hadn't tossed it into his mouth and took a swig of booze as I was walking toward him. The lighting in there was dim, but my guess is it was white and oblong. There's no pill bottle in sight. The sheriff scribbled a fresh note and gave me a side-eyed glance. And you said he wasn't into anything illegal. I glanced toward the kitchen windowsill. He wasn't, not that I knew of. Did you give him the pill, Doctor? The sheriff asked suddenly. No. Harry was not currently under my care. He hadn't been since his mother passing. And why was that? Asked Sheriff Cantalone. Doc Hellers frowned. Harry made it very clear to anyone who would listen that he believed I didn't do enough to save his mother from cancer. The truth of the matter was, his mother stopped taking her medication against my advice. She was tired of fighting, and she wanted to go. My heart ached for poor Mrs. Randall. She lived a tough life, raising her children alone while their father rotted away in prison. She was beyond kind, a trait that hadn't been successfully passed down to her son. Harry knew this, according to his mother, but that did not stop him from being belligerent with me every time our paths crossed. And when he threatened violence, I reported it to the sheriff's department. And to my knowledge, nothing was done. I looked to the sheriff in surprise. Well, we were keeping an eye on the situation, he mumbled, gaze focused on his notepad. With all due respect, Sheriff, I find that hard to believe, the doctor said. Most of our neighbors have registered complaints against him with your office, and little to nothing was ever done. Well, with all due respect, Doctor, the sheriff echoed, your assessment is wrong. We were taking necessary actions as appropriate. He leaned back in his seat, one brow raised. I hope you would do the same. Dr. Hallers tipped his head to one side. If you're accusing me of murder, Sheriff, I think we both know better. I've spent my life trying to save lives, not end them. Yes, Doc, and I can imagine how not being able to save a dying man might tarnish that reputation. Tell me, was he truly already dead when you found him? Or did he die while you were unsuccessfully resuscitating him? Doc's lips pressed tightly together. After a moment, he rose to his feet and said, I stand by my statement that he was dead when I found him. If you choose to tell others to the contrary, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. I watched him leave, the sheriff paying Doc no mind. As the deputy ushered in the last of my guests, I couldn't help but continue to wonder why the sheriff's department had done so little to protect us all from Harry's actions. Herb Smathers from down the street lowered himself onto my couch, his Gloppy the Chocolate Blob costume stretching awkwardly around his portly body. My 80-something neighbor looked both exhausted and irritated. I doubt he would mince words tonight. "Thank you for your patience, Mr. Smathers," started Sheriff Cantalone. Yeah, I didn't kill him," he snapped. "Now can I go home and get out of this blasted costume? My feet are killing me." "What makes you think there's been a murder?" asked the sheriff. Herb narrowed his eyes. "Jimmy Cantalone, do not sit there and play me for a fool. You wouldn't be interrogating everybody if there hadn't been. Otherwise, our tax dollars are going to waste." A smirk ghosted over the sheriff's lips. "Well, your tax dollars are being well applied, I can assure you. And as I would like to get you home and out of that thing, I'll keep this brief. Did you have any interactions with Mr. Randall tonight?" "Yes," said Herb. "And?" the sheriff asked. "And he was a punk to me like always. Randall was leaning against the sliding glass door and blocking the cooler where I kept my bottled water and medication, smelling like he bathed in liquor. I asked him to move and he just snorted." "Well, what did you do?" Sheriff Cantalone asked. Herb gave the sheriff a flat look. "I shot him, of course. Didn't you see the gaping bullet hole in his chest?" He paused to throw up his hands. "What do you think I did, Jimmy? I asked him to move a second time and then elbowed him out of the way." The sheriff pursed his lips. "And what was his reaction to this?" "He did what any punk would do. He waited until I took my things from my cooler, then snatched them from me, slid open the back door, and chucked them inside. 'Oops,' he said, and then snickered and stumbled away. One of the Flanagan children was inside and saw what happened." "Oh." The sheriff scribbled more notes, noted the Flanagan kids had mentioned this. "Yeah," continued Herb, "they helped me collect my water and the bottle of pills." At that, the sheriff looked up. "Bottle of pills. Can you describe the contents of that bottle to me?" Herb pointed toward the back porch. "The bottle should still be in my cooler. See for yourself." The sheriff rose and made for the back door, leaving me and Herb alone in the room. "You know, none of this would have happened if you'd just grown a pair and not invited the damn punk," he told me. I felt my cheeks warm. "Easier said than done, Mr. Smathers." "Well, not anymore, it won't be," he said with a crooked smile. Before I could respond, Sheriff Cantalone re-entered the room, Herb's prescription bottle in his hand. He snapped a picture of it with his phone, then took another picture with the lid off. White pills were inside, then recapped it and handed the bottle to Herb. "Since I'm no doctor, can you tell me what this medication is for?" "Oh, thank the good Lord for small miracles," Herb muttered under his breath. At the sheriff glower, Herb's features brightened. "They're for my heart condition. It keeps it from beating too fast." The sheriff nodded. "And when you and the Flanagan children found the bottle inside, was the lid still on it?" "No," admitted Herb. "I don't put the lid on real tight. It's hard on my hands. The green M&M found the bottle open and the pills scattered on the floor. He asked if I wanted to keep them, and I said, heck yeah, I mean, this is mixed floor. It's probably clean enough to eat off of. Besides, the pills were in a corner, like away from foot traffic." "Any chance the kid didn't collect all your pills?" asked Sheriff Cantalone. Herb shrugged. I didn't count them, so sure there's a chance we missed a few. Can't imagine Randall was idiot enough to pop random pills he found on the floor. Then again, if he was that big of an idiot, we're lucky he never procreated. Can I go now?" The sheriff waved him off and resumed his note-taking. I watched Herb shuffle away, suddenly aware of my own exhaustion. Part of me longed for the sheriff and his staff to leave. The other hated the idea of being alone at the property where Harry Randall had just died. "What do you think, Sheriff?" I asked as his writing hand finally slowed. He scanned his notes for a long moment before answering. "I think you've got some neighbors who are very agitated with Harry Randall." I snorted. "Can you blame them?" "Not really," he said. "I just hope no one did anything stupid tonight. Unfortunately, until the Emmy finishes that autopsy, I'll be going back over all the complaint lodged by your neighbors against Harry, looking for possible probable cause. Unless, of course, you have a confession you wish to share, that would make my job a lot easier." I shook my head. "Sorry, I don't. But I do want to know something. Why hasn't the sheriff's department done more with all these complaints against Harry? Sheriff Cantalone sank back into his seat on a long sigh. Honestly, Mick, I'm surprised you don't know. Usually our internal rumor mill gets sloppy and leaks information they shouldn't. I pictured everyone that I worked with on his staff over the years trying to pinpoint who he was referring to. Sure, people talked. Every organization had that. But what could the sheriff have been working so hard to keep from being leaked? The sheriff set his pen down. Harry Randall was being investigated by the feds for a multi-state smuggling ring. My jaw fell slack. What? A multi-million-dollar one, apparently, he added. Rare collectibles mostly. Every time something significant was reported stolen, Harry had been spotted in the area. Trouble was, we could never get any video on him taking off with anything or find where he's been hiding his loot. So that's why you didn't put more pressure on him? I asked. You were afraid he'd run? The sheriff nodded. Of course, if you repeat that to anyone, I'll deny it. Wow, I said, still trying to process the sheriff's revelation. It's too bad he had to go and die before you busted him. If he really was behind the supposed smuggling ring, justice won't be served. Oh, I have a feeling that the place Harry was sent to tonight will be a greater punishment than anything we could have given him. Sheriff Cannelloni rose from his seat and rested his hand on my shoulder. Try and get some rest, Mick. I'll call with any updates. All right, Jack, we're at the deliberation.
You're telling me, hold on.
I'm holding while I'm sipping some water.
Imagine you are, I don't know, a 30-year-old husband, and you find out that your wife was flashed that morning.
Yeah.
And you know exactly who did it.
Yep.
Would you just give that guy a stern talking to and go about your day?
I'm
like what?
I'm honestly not sure what I would do.
Right? That was wow. Okay. Anyway, Mr. Langston, that's an incredible amount of reservation, and also you and your wife should see a therapist, because if that's your only reaction, I should go talk to that dude. Guys, go get counseling.
Before we go deeper into the deliberation, I will remind everybody that Mysteries to Die For remains free. And in exchange for not making you listen to tons and tons of ads, please support our writers. This week is Kira Jacobs. Kira writes some amazing sweet romance stories. So if you're a crossover reader who enjoys cozy-styled romances with a little bit of mystery, a little bit of thrill, check out her backlist. She's a really awesome writer.
Yeah. And she sometimes guests on the podcast.
She does sometimes guest on this podcast. All right. Here is the information you need, Jack, to catch the Candyland killer.
Alrighty.
Okay, Candyland is in chaos, and Sheriff Cantalone has to figure out who has gummed up this Halloween party by killing Harry Randall. Here are the players in the order that we met them. Okay.
All right.
Mick Garcia, the host and Lord Licorice, who is being blackmailed by Harry. Savannah Livingston, the lollipop fairy, who, as you just duly noticed, Harry had flashed earlier that day.
Messed up.
Tyler Livingston, the peppermint forest lumberjack who owned the hardware store that Harry vandalized, and also husband of the wife who just got flashed.
Yeah.
Cindy Flanagan, Mrs. Nutt, whose garden Harry tromped nightly. Sam Flanagan, dressed as a giant peanut, whose fence Harry destroyed.
Not the fence.
The fence. The three Flanagan children, the M&Ms who were mad that Harry ruined the bounce house. Doc Hallers, the King Candy who blamed Harry for his mother's death. Oh, wait, no, sorry, I read that backwards. King Candy who Harry blamed for his mother's death.
Okay.
And my favorite, Herb Smathers, Glappy the Chocolate Blob. I just love that description of Glappy the Chocolate Blob. That's awesome. Who Harry repeatedly belittled.
It was the three children.
The three children.
Beat the shit out of him in the bouncy house.
So here's what we know. Harry was the neighborhood bully. Everyone except Mick had lodged complaints with the sheriff and complained that nothing was done. Mick welcomed his guests into the backyard but said he did not see Harry until he was dead.
That's what he said.
That's what he said. Tyler Livingston had met Harry at the decorated fence and told him to come through the house. Sarah Livingston saw Harry in the kitchen, staring out the window, and Doc Haller saw Harry take a pill and wash it down with liquor.
All right.
Harry spilled Herb's heart pills across the floor, and Herb couldn't be sure that they were all found. The Livingston children said that Harry banged on the outside of the bounce house and then crawled inside and refused to move. I think he actually probably fell inside, but
probably
tomato.
Yeah, potato.
Harry had cuts and scratches on his arms, and his lips were tinted blue. The MEs speculated that the blue may have come from an overdose. No explanation was given on the cuts or scratches. Apparently, he'd been in a fight, but it was never really confirmed nor denied.
All right.
Cindy Flanagan's rake had red-orange stains that she said was from mulch. No damage or marks were noted on any of the other props.
All right.
And no one had any knowledge of illegal drugs. Mick said that Harry kept to liquor and cigarettes. Now it's your move, Jack.
Okay.
Where should Sheriff Cantalone go?
Well, I think Mrs. Flanagan definitely scratched up the Mr. Harry.
Oh, you think she did?
I think so.
So you want me to color her green?
Well, I don't think she killed him.
Okay.
But I think she scratched him.
She got some vengeance?
Yeah, a little bit. Like a get off my property kind of. Yeah, you know.
You're going to show me your...
What? What? Finish the sentence.
I can't.
What? This could go multiple ways.
It's not pretty.
What was it? My impression? Is that what you're laughing at?
No, she was Mrs. Whatever. And she was carrying a garden hoe, and she was the one who got flashed. And never mind. Never mind.
Okay.
Moving on. Oh no, the lollipop fairy got flashed.
Yeah, it was a different person.
So why do you think Cindy used the garden hoe on Harry? Because
wasn't the rake already kind of a little bloody?
Well, it was stained,
Uh-huh.
supposedly from mulch.
Nah, I say it was blood.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying she went up, raked the boy, and then left.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. But you don't think she killed him?
I don't think she killed him.
Okay.
Mick could have done it.
Mick.
I feel like Mick could have done it.
Okay, so I'm gonna do Mick yellow.
Mm-hmm.
How about Savannah Livingston, the lollipop fairy who got flashed?
No.
So we'll color her red.
Yeah. There's literally not enough information on Savannah.
How about Tyler, the husband, who you just totally destroyed his masculinity for having him have a stern talking to?
I would like you please to not show your genitalia to my wife again. Thank you very much. Have a good day, sir. I know that's not how he would have done it. But that's what I like to imagine. That's how my brother would have what was the word? Impersonated what he would have done.
Yeah.
I could see him saying that. I don't think he did it, to be honest with you. He probably has the most motivation to do it because what happened to his wife was the most screwed up thing out of everything in that whole list.
Yeah.
You know, that's worse than the blackmail, in my opinion. The blackmail on accidentally clipping a homeless person. But no, I don't think he did it.
So you want him red?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have Cindy Flanagan. So we already said that you didn't think she killed him.
I didn't think she did it.
I'm sorry, you did or do not?
No, I don't think she did it. I think she raked the guy.
Okay. Whenever you say rake, it just sounds so much like rape. We need to find another word. She can't say hoed. Let's just go with beat. Let's just go with beat. Scratched. Good.
Okay.
How about Sam Flanagan?
Sam Flanagan, I think, could have done... No. It's a fake axe. Also, it must be a really realistic axe. If the did you see? You remember that scene
Yes.
where like the cop was like, "Is that a real axe?" No, dude.
So are we coloring him yellow?
We'll color him red. He probably
Color
didn't do
him
it.
red. Okay. Then we have the 3 Flanagan children.
Whew, strong contenders. They would be great underdogs in this.
They would be great
They
underdogs.
would be. But I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
Because I'm sane.
Doc Hellers, King Candy.
Doc Howlers is strange because some part of me is like, no, there's something more there. So I'm gonna give him a yellow.
We're going to give him a yellow.
Give him a yellow.
And then we have Herb Smathers.
Herb would be the funniest. I mean,
Blappy the chocolate blob.
the cause of death seems to be the overdose, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it was Herb. I mean, he's the most entertaining, and I feel like knowing Kira, she would have made it Herb. But I don't have the evidence for Herb to have done it. Although, I mean, it was his pill. It was his pill, but we don't know. No, because so we have the Flanagan kids basically confirming that, I mean, I guess we didn't talk with the Flanagan kids, so we don't know for sure that the kids actually did help with all that cleanup stuff.
I think we can take it that the kids did help the old man with the cleanup stuff.
We can, because he even mentioned it was unique, or it was interesting in the story that the kids didn't mention it and they wrote it down.
Did he go back and confirm that? The what they couldn't, or what nobody could tell, was whether they got all the pills.
Oh, well, because when Herb, or not, was Herb the old guy? How did I
Yeah.
already forget?
Yep, he's the old guy.
When Herb was writing it or was saying it, what's Callahan?
Cantalone.
That was totally wrong.
The sheriff.
Cantalone. Cantalone was like, oh, interesting that the kids didn't mention it, but like in his head kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, but I guess if he's just asking the kids about finding the body in the bounce house, why would they tell him about picking up pills in the kitchen? Like,
well,
in
I
a
guess
kid
so, but
world, that's like totally not related.
But
to
it was
each other.
also, they were, okay, look, you know how the story ends. If you're saying it's not important, I'll believe you. But for the sake of gaming it, if, the police officer had asked them, have you interacted with Mr. Guy, Mr. Harry, any other part of the day, because they probably would ask the kids that, the kids would probably be like, yeah, they threw this old guy's pills all over the floor and we have to pick them up.
Yeah.
But we'll game it and say you said it's not important, so it must not be important. And if it is, I get half a point for you throwing me off, okay?
So what are we doing with Mr. Smathers here?
I don't know. Probably give him a red, but I'm sure he's secretly the guy.
Okay, so you got 2 yellows. You got our host, Lord Licorice, Mick Garcia, and Dr. Howler's King Candy.
Honestly, I can't at the moment see any clue that clearly points to one specific person. I'm sure it's hiding there. Whether it be in like the order of operations kind of thing, like how did everything happen? Well, it clearly had to be this person then. Because who was the last person to see him before he went out to the bounce house was the doctor, right?
I don't know that we really know that. I mean, what we have is the order that they were interviewed in. And so in that sense, the last one who spoke is Mathers. But I am not sure about, I'd have to reconstruct
what
the
happened
order.
What happened was, so we, like, the one guy told him to come inside. Great. It was one of the husbands.
Yes.
The one lady noticed him walk through.
Yep.
The doctor saw him take a pill.
Yes.
Someone saw him by the window.
Yes.
But like we found out he got the pill from what's his face, from Herb, and then afterwards he's standing at the window. Who were the 2 people that saw him at the window? Because 2 separate people saw him at the window.
So the doc saw him
take
taking
the
the pill and wash it down with whiskey.
Someone else saw him there just with whiskey.
I think it was one of the women. I'm scrolling. It was Savannah, So she said that Harry was standing in the kitchen, scowling out the window over Mick's sink with a bottle of Jim Beam in his hand.
And that's all we know about. Did Savannah say anything else other than she got flashed? Did she say when it was at all?
That morning.
I mean, when it was. Sorry, you're right. But when it was, she saw him.
Just that she had gone inside to use the restroom, and he was standing in the kitchen with a bottle of Jim Beam. And then, like you said, the doctor said that he went inside and saw Harry, taking a pill and washing it down with the whiskey. And what's not clear to me as I scroll through is where the timing of him throwing Smathers pills are.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's suggesting that pill that, they spilled of Smathers was the one he was taking, which would make you assume that he spilled the pills before he got
Yes.
Before he got caught with.
Isn't that kind of gross? You take a pill, not only somebody else's pill that you don't know what it is, but you pull it off the floor. I guess we have dogs, so you don't eat anything off of our floor.
No, you don't.
You just don't.
Well, I think out of all of this, it's probably either the doctor or Mick, and Mick is the most entertaining option. But from the standpoint of I have no real reason to accuse Mick other than his entire life is being confined by that dude, which is a pretty damn good reason to pick Mick. I'm going to lose a point today, aren't I? Gosh darn it.
You have to pick somebody.
I know. Mick or King Candy. Probably Mick. I trust Mick as the correct answer more.
Okay.
Although I'm sure it's...
We're going to change Mick to green.
All right.
All right. Before we get into the big reveal, I want to remind all of you mystery lovers that there are companions to our seasons. And so the one for this half of Games People Play is called Final Move. It is available in ebook and print from all of your favorite digital and retailers, and then print book from Amazon. Check them out. The nickels and dimes that we collect from the sales keep Jack in zesty t-shirts and new...
No, we have to explain that joke before we tell people it.
You explain the joke.
Okay, this happened today. My sister-in-law bought my brother-in-law a t-shirt. It's weird to say sister and brother-in-law because they're married. So it sounds really like, sister-brother, but it's not, even slightly. Anyway, my sister-in-law and her husband, she got him a shirt that said zesty on it with some fruit. It's a great shirt.
It is a great shirt.
However, she didn't know that zesty means, like fruity and a little, flamboyant and a little effeminate. And he went, "Why did you get me a shirt that says zesty? I am not." And she went, "Oh, didn't know that meant that." And then they told the story and it showed me the shirt. And I went, "That's an amazing shirt." And she was like, "Well, he doesn't want it." I was like, "Well, I want it." So now I have a yellow shirt with fruit on it that says
Big
zesty.
Fruit. There's kiwi and oranges.
I think it's at Target. So if you want to match me with zesty t-shirts, you can. It's a great shirt. Anyway, yeah, if you want to buy me another zesty shirt, go get that print book. Okay, I got a copy in my room right now. It's looking pretty nice. It's very smooth.
Yeah, it's a nice cover.
It is.
All right, so we're ready for Chapter 5, the rest of the story.
Yep.
I took the week off work, needing time to process everything. No autopsy news came the following day or the next. My neighbors pitched in on the party cleanup, a ruse to check on me and make sure I hadn't had a breakdown in the quiet aftermath. Such kind, caring people. I would miss them all. Midweek, I received a text from Harry's sister, thanking me for getting word about her brother's passing to her. She would be driving out this weekend to go through his things and donate what she could to local charities. I told her to stop by my place first. If I wasn't home, there would be a key under the potted mums on my back deck. I had zero intention of being here, as nice as it would be to see her again, but my plane ticket was already purchased and my brother Jorge was waiting. It was finally time. Thursday morning, as I was retrieving my empty trash receptacle from the curb, Sheriff Cantalone's cruiser pulled to a stop at the end of my driveway. I approached his vehicle as the driver's side window lowered. Finally got an update? He nodded. It seems Mr. Randall's drinking finally caught up with him. I tipped my head to one side. You mean his liver gave out? Liver, heart, you name it, it was all shutting down. The ME said he had so many different chemicals in his system that it was hard to pinpoint exactly what was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Beer, bourbon, ibuprofen, and a shit ton of vitamin B something. 12 maybe? I thought vitamin B12 was good for you, I asked. 12, 10, I can't remember what she called it. But whatever he took, it sent his blood sugar levels through the roof. Eventually his heart just couldn't take it. My guess is whatever Doc Hallers saw him set this in motion. Remember how the Flanagans claimed that Mr. Randall had been banging on the side of the bounce house before he crashed the little party? The Emmy thinks the drug reaction caught up with him outside and sent him stumbling into the side of it. I'm betting he leaned inside intending to ask for help, but his heart seized up before he could get a word out. Instead, he tumbled forward and probably was dead before the first bounce. Wow, I said, shaking my head. I'm glad to hear it wasn't ruled murder after all. Never thought any of my friends had killed him. I mean, sure, none of them liked Harry, but they're all good people. Nope, no murder here, the sheriff said. Just karma, finally biting him in the ass. I wish he would have hung on for a little longer, though. I would have loved to see him squirm under a federal investigation. Oh yeah, I said. Any luck finding his loot? Checked his trailer from top to bottom, but so far no smoking gun. Don't worry, though, we'll find it. The sheriff answered a radio call and then gave me a nod. Gotta get back at it, Mick. Just wanted to give you an update. See you at work next week. Thank you, sir. I didn't ruin the moment by mentioning that I wouldn't be back. He'd figure it out soon enough on his own. I headed back inside then, the smell of Lysol instantly making my nose itch. I cleaned the house from top to bottom this morning, not a speck of dust in the place. Sure, some people left behind messy homes, but not me. I'd come from nothing, and so took nothing for granted. The next owner of this house deserved to move into a clean home. Maybe it would be Harry's sister. Maybe it would be someone else. Either way, the decision was hers, as was written in the note I had sitting on the kitchen counter with her name on it. I had no need for this place anymore, nor the desire to deal with selling it. I looked out the window over my kitchen sink to the view of my beloved backyard. Damn, I'd had some amazing Halloween parties out there over the years. I would really miss this place, and all of my friends and neighbors. Everyone but Harry. I fished a small white card from my jacket pocket and twirled it between my fingers. It was a game piece from my grandfather's original 1949 Candyland game, the only one that had survived the worst night of my life. My phone buzzed with an incoming text notification, distracting me. It was from my brother, Jorge, my digital boarding pass for this afternoon's flight to Puerto Vallarta. Don't be late, he texted. Not a chance, I texted back, then pocketed the card and reached for my car keys. There were 3 hours left until boarding time at our nearby airport, but I had one last stop to make. 15 minutes later, I pulled into my customary spot before the Pawn Mart the next town over. Hello there, Randall, the owner said as I approached the counter, his smile wide. Mr. Pawn Mart went by Frank. I went by Randall. Neither were our real names. Neither of us cared. And yes, I'd chosen the pseudonym Randall for good reasons. Why do you think the feds were watching Harry instead of watching me? Sure, he'd been a thief his whole life. He also dragged me along in the early days, threatening to rat me out about the lethal hit and run if I didn't drive his getaway vehicle. But he'd been sloppy, his lazy work ethic teaching me exactly what not to do if I wanted to be successful. He never intended to be my teacher, but I'd become an exceptional student, a patient prodigy who had waited years to pull off the perfect ending to his reign. "And what do I have the pleasure of considering today?" Frank asked. I pulled a Spanish coin from my pocket, a single gold piece, much from a much larger sunken treasure collection on display a few states over. "Just a little token I stumbled across last week." "Oh, and that is quite lovely," he said. "Do you mind if I take a look?" "Not at all," I said. "And you came by this honestly?" he asked, looking at the coin through a jeweler's loupe. "At a flea market, if you can believe it," I replied. He nodded, happy to buy the lie, "and I have just the buyer for this piece." "You always do," I said, waiting patiently as he stowed the coin and counted out $5,000 in cash. Yes, I decided I would miss Frank too. Today's $5,000 was a fraction of what he'd paid me over the last 2 years, but would go a long way toward buying me a car in Mexico. I was leaving my current ride to Harry's sister as well. The less I took, the fewer leads for Sheriff Cantalone and his Fed buddies to try and follow. Besides, they were still under the delusion that Harry was behind the smuggling ring, and who was I to ruin their wild goose chase so soon? 20 minutes later, I stepped from my car in our airport's long-term parking, a backpack slung over one shoulder. I took my time walking toward the main terminal, drawing in slow, deep breaths of fresh, crisp fall air. It would smell entirely different where I was going, feel entirely different too. As a trash receptacle came into view up ahead, I slowed, my mind drifting back to the worst night of my life. After the hitchhiker incident, I let Harry stay at my apartment, too terrified to be alone. We kept drinking, him for pleasure, me hoping to pass out and wake in the morning from what had to be a nightmare and nothing more. But when I came to, the sight was worse than I could have imagined. It was Harry, passed out drunk on my couch, and my grandfather's pristine, previously unopened Candyland board game, ajar and wedged under one arm. A collectible that I secretly knew would have sold for thousands and paid my way through college. At 17, it was my prized possession. When Harry spied it in my apartment, I told him never to touch it. I lied and said it wasn't mine. But Harry hadn't listened, or most likely he hadn't cared. So I'd awoken to find the game's contents spilled over my cheap coffee table, the ashes of his spent cigarettes scattered on them all. All that was, except the card in my pocket. The one I carried every day since as a reminder to keep my friends close, my enemies closer. Just before I reached the trash can, I paused to remove a paper bag from my backpack. Inside was the bottle of biotin that I kept in my kitchen cupboard for Harry. Vitamin B7, extra strength for maximum hair loss prevention. It's what Harry had agreed to try at my prompting after he complained about his recent diagnosis of type 2 diabetes and it causing his hair to thin out on top. I'd done the research, showed him as many success stories as I could find. What I hadn't mentioned were the complications that could arise when consumed with high quantities of sugary substances like liquor. Severe complications. Life-threatening complications. I also hadn't mentioned any of this to Sheriff Cantalone either, as he hadn't asked. I did give all honest answers to the ones he did ask of me. It wasn't my fault that he didn't word them in a way that would have actually helped his investigation. Harry took 6 of those pills Halloween night. I knew this because I set them in a little dish on my kitchen windowsill for him before the party, just as I had each day the week prior. That was our routine, since Harry had insisted that the supplement be delivered to my house lest someone piece together that he needed the drug. Of course, had Harry bothered to read up on biotin's potential side effects, he would have had known not to take that many in one sitting, or to chase them down with a bottle of bourbon I'd gifted him before the party. Because a chemical cocktail like that could make a diabetic's blood sugar level skyrocket and their heart fail as they succumb to a sudden cardiac death. But then, Harry hadn't done his own research in years. I had. And why would he doubt me? We'd spent so many years believing I was terrified of being blackmailed. Not anymore, I murmured, tossing the bag of pills into the trash as I passed by on my way to the terminal. A free man at last.
Damn.
You got it.
I'm trying to think of what movie that's like. Where you just get to the end and it's like, I got away with everything. It's the Usual Suspects. That's what it feels like.
Yes.
This is very, and then I killed everyone, and I'm amazing, and I tricked the government, and I lived. Like, that's what it feels. It's very Usual Suspect.
So, you sussed it out there.
I did. Thank you. I'm very proud of myself.
And it was tricky because there really wasn't much evidence pointing to any character.
Yeah, it was the pill.
It was the
pill.
pill.
And you knew it had to come back to the pills because that was the only thing that, like, the scratches was a red herring, didn't mean anything. It didn't matter that the rake was stained or whatever.
No, it didn't matter the rake was
Didn't matter that he had been scratched because, again, it was unrelated to anything that really happened.
Yep.
It all came down to a couple things he had mentioned.
Well, and even that, it was sort of, I want to say coincidental timing, but he'd been essentially poisoning him by overdosing
For a while.
For at least a week. And so whether he would have died on Halloween or another day was sort of left to...
And also he didn't know he was going to kind of overdose that day because he purposely gifted him that liquor.
Well,
which he mentioned at the end.
Yeah.
He purposely gave him the liquor and the 6 pills and was like, good night, kind of thing.
No.
But yeah, there's nothing that specifically pointed to him, but there was a couple of things that they mentioned beforehand that made you go, okay, well, after the deliberation, Mick's going to tell us a little bit about the worst night of his life kind of thing. Makes
true.
You go, we're going to stick with this character. Don't know if we're going to stick with any of the other characters, but we're going to stick with this one. So more from a narrative standpoint, you can guess this character is going to continue on. Not just because he's the main character, though, but because he has something interesting.
But you're right. It would have been kind of fun if the Blob Smathers had done it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm too old to put up with this shit. Do you want to learn about Candyland?
I would love to learn about Candyland.
So polio was an ancient disease that hit pandemic status in the 1940s and 50s. You think about that. We had to live with the pandemic for a year? And these people lived with polio for decades. It crippled children and young adults until a vaccine was widely administered in 1955. Children recovering were bedbound and they were bored. Teacher Eleanor Abbott, herself a victim of the disease, invented games to entertain recovering children, including Candyland. Encouraged by friends, Abbott submitted her idea to Milton Bradley, who picked it up to fill in their product line. It soon became one of their best-selling games. In 2005, Candyland was inducted into the Strong National Museum of Play. Candyland has continued to grow and develop, offering game variations including special character editions and electronic editions, so you can get your candy on no matter where you are. Link to the research sources are in the show notes. And now let me introduce you to our friend Kira Jacobs. Kira is an extroverted introvert who writes of love, humor, and mystery in the Midwest and beyond. When this Hoosier native isn't pounding out scenes for her next book, she's likely outside and elbow deep in Snapdragons or spending quality time with her sports-loving family. Kira also loves to read, tries to golf, and is an avid college football fan. Connect with her on social media. Links can be found on her website at kirajacobsbooks.com. You noticed, Jack, I said Hoosier right that time.
Yay.
That wraps up this episode of Mysteries to Die For. Please do support our show by subscribing, telling a mystery love about us, and giving us a 5-star review. Check out our website, tgwolff.com/podcast, for links to this season's authors. Mysteries to Die For is hosted by TG Wolff and Jack Wolff. Death by Candyland was written by Kira Jacobs. Music and production are by Jack Wolff. Episode art is by TG Wolff. Join us next week for a toe tag, which is the first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, or thriller genre, and then come back in 2 weeks for our next original story, where Hangman is the featured game. All right, Jack, take us out.